My parents ignored my breathing struggles for 4 minutes because my twin Emily swore I was faking. Now, CPS doctors are uncovering years of their neglect. In our house, one rule controlled me. I needed Emily's approval for medical care. During Emily's birthday speech practice, my lungs tightened. I grabbed for my inhaler, but Mom snatched it away. "Emily, does Katie need this?" Mom asked as Emily scrolled on her phone. "She used it earlier." "She's fine," Emily said, not looking up. "You heard her," Mom said, pocketing my inhaler. "No drama today. It's Emily's sweet 16. This rule started when we were 12 after I faked pneumonia during Emily's ballet recital. I wasn't faking, but Emily said I was, and that became the truth. Every fever, headache, or asthma attack needed Emily's okay from then on. "I can't breathe," I wheezed, my body sounding its alarm. "Katie," Dad called from the doorway. "What's the rule if you're sick?" I knew the drill. "Ask Emily." And what did Emily say? "She's fine," Emily snapped. "God, Katie, why make my day about you?" My chest felt crushed, like breathing through a straw. "Please," I gasped. "Hospital." Mom rushed to comfort Emily. "She's faking again. Make her stop." "Go to your room, Katie," Dad said. "The modeling scout's coming." I tried standing but clung to the couch, my nails turning blue. "Look," I said, showing my hands. Emily laughed. She probably painted them blue, like when she faked fainting at my recital. It wasn't fake. I'd had an asthma attack, but Emily called it jealousy, so my parents stayed for her show. The doorbell rang. Party guests arrived. "Katie, disappear," Dad ordered. "We don't need your wheezing ruining Emily's moment." My lungs fought harder, my shirt trembling with each breath. I was losing. "Mom, hospital," I begged. "Emily," Mom asked softly, "does Katie need the hospital?" Emily blocked their view of me, her eyes glinting. "She's faking. She's just mad about Rowan. Rowan was my friend until Emily stole him." "I knew it," Mom said. "Katie, stop." Then I coughed blood. Emily's friend Veronica froze. "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with Katie?" "She's being dramatic," Emily said quickly. "She's coughing blood," Veronica insisted. "No, she's not," Emily said, stepping in front of me. "Go help with decorations." But Veronica, a pre-med student, pushed past and checked my pulse. "She's in respiratory failure." "We don't do emergencies without Emily's say," Dad said, like it was normal. "What?" Veronica gasped, dialing 911. "Emily knows Katie best," Mom said. "She spots when Katie's acting." "Acting?" Veronica snapped. "She's dying." "Emily, is Katie dying?" Mom asked. Emily hesitated, hating that her birthday spotlight shifted to me. "No," she said firmly. "She always does this when I'm the focus." Then I stopped breathing entirely. Everything went still. "Katie, stop it," Emily said, her voice faltering. "Guests are coming." "She's not breathing," Veronica shouted. "She's holding her breath," Emily insisted, voice cracking. "She's ruining my party." I collapsed off the couch, feeling nothing as I hit the floor. Veronica started chest compressions. "Call 911. But Emily said, Mom began. "I don't care." Veronica yelled. Guests arrived amid screams and chaos. Someone searched for my inhaler. "It's Katie's fault," Emily sobbed. "She always ruins everything." "Your sister's dying," Veronica said, her voice sharp. "Help me," Dad begged, pulling at Veronica. "Emily says she's fine." Rowan's voice cut through my fading world. "Mr. Litt, she's blue, actually blue." Emily's scream pierced the air. "You're supposed to be on my side." 3 days later, I woke in the ICU. The doctor said I'd been clinically dead for 4 minutes. My parents waited for Emily's okay to save me. They couldn't face me. Emily said you were fine, they kept muttering. But Veronica knew the truth. Rowan knew. Everyone at the party knew. We were ready to expose them. Machines beeped steadily around my bed. The doctor, face serious, pulled up a chair. He explained my heart stopped for 4 minutes during my respiratory failure. They needed to monitor me for brain or organ damage. He asked if I could feel my toes, recall my birthday, count backward from 10. His pen scratched as he noted my answers. Then he dropped a bombshell. The hospital reported my case to CPS. Witnesses saw my parents block calls for help as I lay dying. A CPS worker would visit soon, he said. The hospital had to report suspected medical neglect. An hour later, my parents showed up. Mom sobbed dramatically, claiming she was terrified. Dad insisted I was just acting out, as I always did during Emily's big moments. They wanted to take me home, but the doctor stopped them. I needed a week of observation due to my cardiac arrest and possible complications. 3 left, I hit the call button. When the nurse arrived, I spilled everything. The rule since I was 12 that Emily controlled my medical care, even my inhaler. Her eyes widened. She scribbled notes, asking me to repeat details, muttering about updating my medical file. The next day, Veronica and Rowan visited, sitting by my bed. They vowed to give statements about the party. Veronica, using her pre-med skills, had recorded my vitals before the ambulance. Rowan showed me his phone video of Dad blocking Veronica's 911 call. 2 days later, CPS worker Camila Dwar interviewed me. Gently but thoroughly, she asked about the medical permission rule and its history. She photographed scars from untreated allergic reactions and documented times Emily denied me care for strep throat, a broken finger, food poisoning. The next morning, Dr. Elias Mercer, a lung specialist, spent an hour teaching me an asthma action plan. I didn't need anyone's permission anymore. He showed me how to use my inhaler with a spacer and gave me a peak flow meter to track my breathing. 2 days later, my parents returned, pressuring me to lie and say I exaggerated everything. They warned I'd regret helping CPS. I recorded it all on my phone, hidden under my blanket. On social media, Emily posted perfect party photos, calling it her best night ever. Some asked if I was okay after the ambulance. Others believed her claim I faked it for attention. Seeing those posts with IVs in my arms made me sick. Veronica spent hours drafting a detailed statement. My blue lips, stopped breathing, my parents' delay in allowing 911. She gave copies to CPS and the police, ready to testify about the neglect that nearly killed me. The next morning, Camila returned with a thick folder. CPS was enforcing an emergency safety plan. I couldn't go home until their investigation ended. She asked if I had safe family or friends. My aunts and uncles were too far or sided with my parents. Veronica texted me, and her mom agreed I could stay with them. Camila needed 3 days for background checks and a home visit to verify Veronica's place was safe. The social worker checked their house, ensuring I'd have a bedroom and asking about her parents' schedules. Once approved, Veronica's dad drove me to my parents' house to pack. They stood in the doorway, glaring as I grabbed clothes, books, and my laptop. Mom called it a misunderstanding, urging me to come home. Camila stayed close, ensuring they didn't stop me from leaving. Dad stood with crossed arms, warning I'd destroy our family. Kept packing, hauling boxes to the truck. From her window, Emily typed furiously on her phone, likely spinning her version of events. Veronica's mom had my new room ready, fresh sheets, cleared closet space. I felt safe. The next week, I met Olivia Watson, the school counselor, in her cozy office with motivational posters and a candy bowl. She pulled up my schedule, noting which teachers needed to know about my asthma. I got permission to carry my inhaler everywhere and leave class if breathing got tough, no questions asked. Olivia set extended deadlines for missed assignments and offered her office for lunch when the cafeteria felt overwhelming. Rowan texted me that night saying he had something to show me. At a coffee shop, he shared 2-year-old texts where Emily laughed about denying me a doctor for strep throat, joking about my begging with laughing emojis. Rowan had saved them, sensing something was off. He sent them to Camila, offering to testify about the party and those messages. Dr. Mercer met me again, teaching me to use my peak flow meter, 3 blows morning and night recorded on a chart. He explained the zones: green for safe, yellow for caution, red for hospital. For the first time in years, I could track my lungs without Emily's judgment. In a school group chat, Emily claimed I was staying with friends for attention, dismissing my near death as exaggerated. Some classmates pushed back, citing partygoers who saw me stop breathing, but Emily insisted I was jealous. Camila called me to the CPS office, explaining the investigation into my parents for child endangerment and medical neglect. Could mean months of interviews or court dates, maybe jail or probation for them. Was I ready? 2 weeks post-hospital, school felt like a spotlight. During third period, my chest tightened. I used my inhaler in class, no permission needed. The attack passed quickly, and my teacher, prepped by Olivia, said nothing. Veronica got my hospital discharge papers, detailing severe respiratory distress and possible medical negligence. They noted my 4-minute cardiac arrest and Veronica's life-saving CPR. Principal emailed about a Thursday meeting with my parents, who called it a misunderstanding harming Emily. My stomach churned at facing them. Olivia offered to join me, saying I could skip it if I felt unsafe. But I had to confront them. 2 days before, we prepped for 3 hours. Olivia marked student rights papers, showing me where to sit near the door and phrases to use if my parents got aggressive. She taught me to count breaths to stay calm and promised to sit beside me, noting everything. 2 arm taps and we'd leave. Before class, Veronica handed me her 4-page statement packed with medical details, my pulse, my breathing patterns from that day. I read it on the hallway floor, stunned by her precision. She wrote about my blue lips and pale nail beds, using fancy pre-med terms to make my condition sound even worse. She signed and dated the bottom, noting she'd already given copies to Camila and the investigator handling the case. After chemistry class on Wednesday, I was packing up at my locker when Emily appeared behind me and slammed it shut. She grabbed my wrist, twisting hard, demanding I tell everyone I was fine and that this whole mess was overblown. I tried to pull free, but her nails dug deeper, leaving red scratches as she yelled that I was ruining her life for no reason. When I finally yanked my arm away and started walking, she spun me around so hard my books scattered across the floor. Kids in the hallway froze, staring as she screamed that I'd always been jealous and was just trying to steal her spotlight. I grabbed my books quietly and went straight to the nurse's office, where she photographed my scratches and filed an incident report. That night, I scrolled through social media, reading comments about the party. Some kids who were there said they saw me on the floor, turning blue, while my parents argued with Veronica instead of helping. Others, mostly Emily's friends, claimed I'd always been dramatic and probably staged it all to ruin her birthday. A girl from my English class posted a long piece saying she'd seen my asthma attacks at school before, and they were real, not fake like Emily said. Comments exploded, with people picking sides and sharing old posts where Emily bragged about controlling my medical choices. On Thursday, I sat in the conference room with Olivia and the principal as my parents walked in with their lawyer. Mom cried, saying I'd always been difficult and exaggerated things, while Dad claimed Emily knew me better than anyone. They said their permission rule was just to stop me from seeking unnecessary medical help for minor issues. I waited until they finished, then calmly explained how the rule started when I was 12, listing times Emily blocked my care. Principal's face shifted when I described waiting 6 hours with a broken finger because Emily was at a sleepover. When I mentioned enduring strep throat for 2 weeks because Emily thought I was lying to skip her choir concert, he scribbled notes fast. My parents' lawyer tried to cut in, but the principal raised his hand and told me to keep going. So I shared every incident I could remember. Later that week, Camila called about her interview with Emily, who spent 2 hours claiming I'd faked illnesses since we were kids. Emily offered a detailed timeline of supposed fake sick days, but when Camila asked for specifics, most dates didn't match any absences. Camila showed my medical records from age 12, proving I'd been hospitalized with severe pneumonia that went untreated so long it scarred my lungs. Emily went quiet when she saw the chest x-rays, then tried to say she didn't remember that incident. The next Monday, the pediatric clinic faxed 15 years of my medical files to Dr. Mercer, who spent his lunch break reviewing them, his frown growing. He found 7 times I had serious illnesses that got worse because of delayed treatment. Each one lined up with a big event on Emily's calendar, like dance recitals, contests, or parties. He laid out the pattern on his desk with sticky notes marking each case and the delays in my care. By Wednesday, Dr. Mercer wrote a 5-page report showing how denied care could have killed me multiple times over the years. He included lung scans showing scars from untreated infections and blood tests proving I fought off major infections without proper antibiotics. His report said no kid could fake the physical evidence in my medical history, calling the delays clear medical neglect. That night, my phone blew up with texts from my parents, threatening to cut off my college fund and leave me homeless at 18 if I didn't tell CPS I was exaggerating. Dad's messages got angrier, accusing me of being ungrateful and destroying our family over teenage drama. I screenshotted everything and sent them to Camila and Sarah Alcott, the civil attorney Olivia connected me with that week. Sarah went to court the next morning, filing for an immediate protective order, saying it'd be faster than waiting for criminal charges. She explained the order would stop my parents from controlling my medical care or contacting me during the investigation. With their threatening texts as proof, she said the judge would likely approve it quickly. That weekend, I sat at Veronica's kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, writing down every time I got sick and what happened. I listed the date, what was wrong, what Emily was doing, and whether I got help. For 3 hours, I had 4 pages of tiny writing, and the pattern made my stomach churn. Every school play, dance competition, or big social event for Emily matched times I couldn't get medical care. I remembered sitting through her 8th grade graduation with a 103 degrees fever from strep throat because she thought I was faking. Once, I broke my wrist falling off my bike but couldn't go to the ER until the next day because Emily's sleepover came first. Each incident got its own line in my timeline, totaling 27 times over 4 years that Emily blocked my care for real injuries or illnesses. Rowan left me a voicemail, his voice shaky but clear, describing what he saw at the party. He talked about my blue lips, purple nails, and gasping breaths, and how my dad grabbed Veronica's arm to stop her from calling 911. Rowan said he was filming for Emily's birthday montage and caught some of it on his phone, including Dad saying they needed Emily's permission first. 3 days later, I sat in court with Sarah for the protective order hearing as my parents walked in with a sharp-looking lawyer in a gray suit. He argued this was a private family matter, not for court, and parents have the right to make medical decisions for their kids. The judge, an older woman with reading glasses on a chain, asked if he was really saying one child should control another's medical care. The lawyer called it a parenting choice, but the judge cut him off, asking my parents if they actually made me get Emily's permission to use my inhaler during an asthma attack. Mom started explaining how Emily knew me best, but the judge's face grew stern with every word. After 40 minutes, the judge granted the protective order, though not as broad as Sarah wanted. I got full control over my medical decisions, no longer needing anyone's permission, and my parents could only see me with CPS or another approved adult present. The judge said she'd never heard of parents giving one sibling medical authority over another and found it deeply troubling, but she needed more evidence of direct harm for a full no-contact order. That afternoon, I opened my phone and saw Emily's Instagram rant about how I'd destroyed her future. The modeling scout had backed out after hearing about her party, and she blamed me for ruining her dreams with my attention-seeking drama. But the comments were brutal. Students called her out for letting me nearly die. I noticed 2 of her dance team friends had unfollowed her. Later that week, Camila came to Veronica's house with a thick CPS preliminary report. I sat on the couch, flipping through 15 pages of interviews with party witnesses, hospital doctors, and school staff who'd noticed disturbing patterns over time. The report used phrases like severe medical neglect and failure to protect, saying my parents didn't grasp how harmful their actions were. The investigator recommended CPS stay involved with mandatory parenting classes and supervised visits. 2 days later, I met Nolan Graves, the assistant district attorney, in his downtown office. He looked younger than I expected, with dark hair and tired eyes, and said proving my parents meant to kill me was nearly impossible, though their actions were clearly criminal. He explained child endangerment charges were more likely to stick, given the strong evidence they put me at risk by denying care. He asked me to write a victim impact statement and warned the case could take months to move forward. That weekend, I learned my parents filed a CPS complaint, claiming Veronica's family was turning me against them and keeping me isolated. The accusation made my hands shake with anger. Veronica's family saved my life while my parents watched me suffer. When I started crying, Veronica's mom hugged me, promising we had all the evidence on our side. 5 days later, Sarah called to say the complaint was dropped. The judge said CPS placed me with Veronica's family for safety, based on medical evidence, not manipulation. He added that filing false complaints could lead to harassment charges. The next week, I visited Dr. Mercer's office with my peak flow meter and the log I'd kept for a month. I tracked my numbers 3 times daily as he taught me, and the improvement was clear in black and white. My baseline jumped from 250 to 380, and I hadn't had a major asthma attack since starting my daily inhaler without needing permission. Dr. Mercer grinned as he reviewed the charts, saying this was what proper asthma management looked like, not waiting for emergencies. 3 days later, the school called me to the office for Emily's Code of Conduct hearing. I walked into the conference room where the principal and 2 administrators sat behind a large table. They had a thick folder open, filled with reports and student statements about Emily grabbing me in the hallway. Principal asked me to describe what happened, so I recounted how she cornered me after chemistry, gripping my arm hard enough to bruise. I showed them Veronica's photos of the yellow-green marks still on my forearm. They took notes and asked if this was the first time she'd done something like this. I shared how she'd followed me between classes or blocked my path to yell at me while I stayed with Veronica's family. The assistant principal pulled out more papers, saying 3 teachers reported Emily approaching me despite warnings to stay away. They said they were taking it seriously, especially with the ongoing legal case, and would decide within 2 days. That night at 11 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Emily's number. I nearly deleted it but hit play instead. Her voice trembled as she sobbed, admitting she knew I was sick at the party but couldn't let it ruin her moment with the modeling scout. She said she saw me turning blue and hoped it was fake so she wouldn't feel guilty about wanting a perfect party. She swore she didn't mean for me to die but couldn't admit her mistake in front of everyone. My hands shook as she confessed to knowing I was dying and lying about it. I saved the voicemail to 3 places on my phone and laptop. Within minutes, I sent copies to Sarah, Camila, and Nolan. This changed everything. Emily had just admitted to deliberately denying me care during a life-threatening emergency. The next morning, Dr. Mercer called about his formal letter for the criminal case. Over the phone, he read parts describing how denying asthma treatment during a severe attack was medical neglect that could lead to death. He used terms like respiratory failure and cardiac arrest to show how serious it was. He'd already sent copies to Nolan and offered to testify as an expert if needed. 2 days later, Nolan called while I was doing homework at Veronica's kitchen table. He said they'd reviewed everything, including Emily's voicemail, and were moving forward with misdemeanor child endangerment charges against my parents. Felony charges were unlikely, he said, because proving intent was too hard, but these charges still carried weight. He noted my parents would face court and possibly up to a year in jail, though rare for first-time offenders. He asked if I was okay with this level of accountability, and I said yes, it was better than nothing. The next week, I attended a CPS case conference at their downtown office. Camila and 2 supervisors discussed next steps for my case. They suggested family therapy with ongoing oversight, but I said I didn't feel safe with people who saw no wrong in their actions. I explained how my parents thought they were just enforcing house rules and didn't get the problem. The supervisors exchanged looks and agreed to hold off on therapy until the criminal case was resolved. They stressed my safety came first, and forcing therapy before my parents took responsibility could do more harm than good. Later that week, Olivia called me to her school office to discuss an accommodations plan. She had papers spread out to ensure I always had access to my medication at school. We wrote that I could leave any class without permission if I had breathing issues. I could carry my inhaler at all times and use it whenever needed, no questions asked. She made sure no teacher could challenge these rights under any circumstances. She gave me a card listing my rights and sent copies to the nurse and all my teachers. That weekend, Rowan texted asking if we could talk about the criminal hearing. We met at a coffee shop near school and sat at a corner table. Rowan said he wanted to testify about what he saw at the party but wasn't sure if I wanted him involved. We had an awkward talk about how Emily misled him, claiming I faked illnesses out of jealousy and drama. He showed me texts where she convinced him I'd been seeking attention for years. We agreed he should stick to what he saw at the party, my blue lips and Dad stopping Veronica from calling 911. Talk felt weird but crucial, and we both knew his testimony would help the case. A few days before the hearing, I met Camila and Sarah at Sarah's office. I told them I wanted to testify at the criminal hearing, not as a victim but to share the truth about what happened. They helped me practice my words, making sure I didn't sound weak or broken. Camila urged me to focus on facts, while Sarah taught me to stay calm if the defense tried to rattle me. We rehearsed until I could speak without crying. The next week, during gym class, I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. I didn't panic, instead I grabbed my inhaler and peak flow meter. My numbers were dropping, but not dangerously low yet. I told the teacher I needed to sit out and monitor my breathing. I used my inhaler again after 5 minutes and checked my peak flow every few minutes. In 15 minutes, my numbers normalized and the tightness eased. The gym teacher watched it all and said I handled it perfectly. She praised my calm and preparedness. As I pocketed my inhaler, I realized I wasn't scared anymore. I finally controlled my own health. 3 days later, I saw my parents' SUV parked by Veronica's Honda after school. My stomach dropped as they got out and approached, despite the protective order barring them from coming within 50 feet. I pulled out my phone and called the compliance number Sarah gave me, reporting my location. As they got closer, Mom was crying and Dad insisted they just wanted 5 minutes to talk, but I stayed on the phone and backed away from the gate. Within 4 minutes, 2 security guards rushed out, one filming, standing between me and my parents. Dad claimed they had a right to see me, but a guard cited the protective order on file with the school. They had to leave or face charges for trespassing and violating a court order. The next morning, Emily cornered me at my locker, yelling that I'd ruined her life and cost her a modeling contract she'd worked for since middle school. Students stopped to stare as she screamed I was jealous and out to destroy everything good in her life, like always. I stayed silent, recording her on my phone as she ranted about everyone thinking she was a monster. When she stormed off, I went to the principal's office and showed him the video, explaining Olivia's advice to record everything. He said it was Emily's 3rd incident report that week and set an emergency disciplinary hearing for that afternoon. The hearing lasted 2 hours, with the principal, vice principal, and 3 teachers reviewing reports and witness statements about Emily cornering me multiple times. They suspended her from all extracurriculars, including student council and debate, and issued a no-contact order banning her from approaching me on school grounds. One violation could mean suspension or expulsion, giving me one safe place at last. That weekend, Nolan called to say he'd filed misdemeanor child endangerment charges against my parents and needed my victim impact statement for court. I met Sarah at her downtown office where we spent 3 hours drafting and refining my statement to keep it factual, not overly emotional. We practiced reading it aloud, with Sarah pacing me to slow down on tough parts. She told me to pause, breathe, and look at the judge, not just the paper. 2 weeks later, at the arraignment, my parents stood with their lawyer as the prosecution read charges of willfully denying medical care to a child in their custody. When the judge asked for their plea, they whispered, "Not guilty," in voices I barely recognized. Emily sat behind them in the gallery, pale and looking younger than 16. her hair in a plain ponytail instead of her usual perfect curls. She stared at me like she was seeing me as a real person for the first time, not just her twin meant to stay in her shadow. The judge set the trial for 6 weeks later and reminded my parents they could only contact me through lawyers. A month later, I stood at the courtroom podium, hands shaking so hard I gripped the edges to read my statement. I explained the permission rules simply, starting when I was 12 and Emily decided I faked being sick at her recital. I described the party, reading notes about struggling to breathe and my parents refusing to help as I turned blue. My voice broke when I got to nearly dying for 4 minutes, but I pushed through, my words growing stronger until I clearly stated what they'd done. The courtroom was silent except for my voice and Mom's quiet sobs at the defendant's table. After 3 days of testimony from Veronica, Rowan, other party guests, and Dr. Mercer's evidence of my scarred lungs from untreated illnesses, my parents' lawyer asked to meet the prosecutor. They worked out a plea deal where my parents would plead guilty to a lesser felony for 18 months of mandatory parenting classes and monitoring instead of possible jail time. It wasn't the toughest penalty, but it forced them to admit guilt, and it'd stay on their record, affecting future jobs or housing. The judge approved the deal but added something more. He extended my protective order to state explicitly that Emily had no control over my medical decisions ever. The order made my health and care my sole responsibility, and any family interference would violate it. 2 weeks after the trial, Camila came to Veronica's for our final in-depth CPS meeting, saying they were closing the active investigation phase. They were happy I was safe and doing well with Veronica's family but would check in periodically over the next year and offered therapy referrals if I wanted them. She gave me a folder with all the case documents and her direct number for any future help. At dinner that night, Veronica's parents said the emergency placement was over, but I could stay through the school year, or even until graduation if I wanted. Veronica's mom took my hand, saying I was like a second daughter and they couldn't imagine me leaving now. I said yes instantly. Veronica's family showed me more love in 3 months than my own did in 16 years. 3 months flew by and I sat in Dr. Mercer's office, watching him pull up my test results. He showed me numbers proving my lung function jumped from 60% to nearly 90% just by taking my meds as prescribed. The graphs climbed like mountain slopes, and he printed them for me, explaining how consistent treatment reversed most damage from years of untreated attacks. He wrote prescriptions for 3 months and ensured I had backup inhalers at home, school, and Veronica's car. He gave me extra spacers and showed me how to clean them to avoid infections. The next day, Olivia called me to her school office where folders and a label maker covered her desk. We spent 2 hours building my safety file, with sections for medical records, legal papers, emergency contacts, and tabs for insurance cards and therapy referrals. She made 3 copies of my protective order for different locations. We scanned everything onto a flash drive for backup while discussing college applications and how survivors use their stories in personal statements. We explored scholarships for medical hardship and pamphlets for colleges with strong support for chronic health conditions, some with great pre-med programs since I'd been considering it. Rowan texted that weekend, asking to grab lunch at a diner near school, just us, no heavy topics. We sat in a booth, eating burgers, chatting about his soccer season and my science project, avoiding Emily or the party. It wasn't the easy bond we had as kids building backyard forts, but it was real. Him checking if I had my inhaler, me grateful he cared enough to ask. In chemistry class, my phone buzzed with a text from Emily admitting she'd made mistakes but not apologizing or owning up to nearly killing me. I sat at Veronica's kitchen table, my phone glowing with Emily's text. Her words stung, admitting she'd made mistakes but stopping short of an apology or acknowledging the night I nearly died. My finger hovered over the reply button, heart pounding with a mix of anger and hurt. I wanted to fire back, to make her see the pain she'd caused, but something stopped me. I took a deep breath, the kind that filled my lungs without fear for the first time in years, and deleted the message. My peace was worth more than the last word. Making her understand wasn't my burden anymore. That night, the house was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of floorboards as Veronica's family moved upstairs. I pulled out a notebook, its pages crisp and untouched, and began writing a personal statement for my safety file. This wasn't just a formality, it was a declaration of my freedom. I wrote with purpose, my pen pressing hard into the paper, stating that I alone controlled my medical decisions. No one else. Not Emily, not my parents, not a single soul could override my right to breathe. I listed every legal document backing me up: the protective order that kept my family at a distance, the CPS findings detailing years of neglect, and the criminal case outcome that held my parents accountable. Each word felt like a brick in a wall I was building around my autonomy. The statement grew to 3 pages, every sentence a testament to my survival. When I finished, I felt a surge of power, like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself that had been stolen. I made 5 copies, one for my backpack, one for my locker, one for the safety file, one for Dr. Mercer's office, and one for Olivia. No matter where I went, proof of my rights would follow. 3 months had passed since that night at the party, the 4 minutes when my lips turned blue and my world nearly faded to black. I called it my 4-minute death, a moment that could have ended everything but instead marked a beginning. Now, I had a protective order keeping my family away, a stable home with Veronica's family who genuinely cared, and medical care from doctors who listened instead of dismissed. My friends, like Rowan and Veronica, put my safety first, checking if I had my inhaler or if I needed a moment to breathe. Trauma still lingered, a shadow that crept into my dreams or tightened my chest in quiet moments. Maybe it always would. But I was no longer trapped in a house where my twin sister held my life in her hands, deciding if I deserved care based on her mood or her plans. Saturday morning dawned bright, the kind of crisp fall day that made you want to open every window. Veronica's mom knocked on my door, her smile warm but determined. "We're going shopping," she said. "For your medical supplies. Yours alone, no sharing, no hiding." My heart swelled at her words. For years, my inhalers had been tucked away in shared cabinets, often moved or borrowed by Emily, leaving me scrambling during attacks. The idea of supplies that were mine, untouchable, felt like a lifeline. We drove to 3 different stores, her minivan rattling with the familiar hum of a family on a mission. The first pharmacy, I spotted a purple peak flow meter, my favorite color, vibrant and bold. Felt like it was made for me. We added a full kit, extra inhalers, spacers, nebulizer masks, and a lockable box to keep it all secure. The second store, we found a small medical fridge for my liquid prescriptions, its sleek design fitting perfectly in my room. The third stop was for a medical alert bracelet, engraved with my asthma diagnosis and emergency contacts. Veronica's mom handed me a pocket card with my action plan, laminated and simple, relying only on my judgment. No one else's. Back home, we set up a medical station in my room at Veronica's house. I labeled each item carefully, my handwriting neat and deliberate. The lockable box sat on my desk, a symbol of control. The mini fridge hummed softly in the corner, holding my meds like a quiet guardian. Veronica's mom stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder, repeating that these were mine. "You never have to ask permission to breathe," she said. Those words hit me harder than I expected, and I blinked back tears. For the first time, I trusted I'd always have what I needed to stay alive, no one's approval required. My asthma was under control now, a stark contrast to the chaos of my elementary school years when attacks sent me to the ER, gasping and terrified, often because Emily or my parents delayed care. I remembered nights curled up in bed, wheezing, praying the attack would pass because Emily was at a dance recital or didn't believe me. Now, I used my inhaler daily, tracked my peak flow numbers, and saw Dr. Mercer regularly. My lung function had climbed from a shaky 60% to nearly 90%, a victory written in the rising slopes of his graphs. He'd shown me the printouts, pointing out how consistent treatment had undone years of damage. It was proof my body could heal when given a chance. Living with Veronica's family felt like coming home in a way I'd never known. They treated me like their own, not a guest or an obligation. At dinner, we laughed over silly stories, and Veronica's little brother teased me about my terrible pancake flipping skills. Her parents checked in on me not out of duty but because they cared. When I had a minor asthma flare-up, Veronica's mom sat with me, timing my inhaler doses while her dad made me tea. They didn't question my symptoms or demand permission from anyone else. They just helped. I'd also started working on college applications, something I hadn't dared dream about before. First, the idea of writing essays about my medical neglect felt daunting, like reopening old wounds. But as I typed, the words poured out, stories of survival, of finding my voice, of learning to trust myself. Olivia, my school counselor, guided me through it. We sat in her office, surrounded by folders and a label maker, creating my safety file. It was more than a collection of papers, it was a roadmap of my freedom. We added sections for medical records, legal documents, and emergency contacts, with tabs for insurance cards and therapy referrals. She made 3 copies of my protective order and scanned everything onto a flash drive. "You're in control now," she said, handing me the drive. "And you're going to do amazing things." Olivia also introduced me to scholarships for students with medical hardships. We pored over pamphlets for colleges with strong support systems for chronic conditions, some with pre-med programs that sparked my interest. I'd started thinking about becoming a doctor, maybe a pulmonologist, to help kids like me who'd been dismissed or ignored. The idea felt big, almost too big, but every time I used my inhaler or checked my peak flow, I remembered how far I'd come. If I could survive years of neglect, I could chase a dream that once seemed impossible. Rowan and I met up that weekend at a diner near school, just the two of us. We slid into a booth, the smell of burgers and fries filling the air. We kept it light, talking about his soccer season and my science project on air quality, ironic given my asthma. Neither of us mentioned Emily or the party. It wasn't like when we were kids, building forts in my backyard, carefree and giggling. But it was honest. He glanced at my bag before we left, asking, "Got your inhaler?" I nodded, touched that he cared enough to check. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world. Emily's text had rattled me, but not enough to pull me back into her orbit. I thought about the years she'd controlled my medical care, dismissing my symptoms as drama or inconvenience. Her message didn't undo that. Didn't erase the night I turned blue at her party while she prioritized her modeling scout over my life. Deleting her text was my way of choosing myself, of refusing to let her guilt or excuses dictate my emotions. I didn't need her to understand. I needed to keep moving forward. Writing my personal statement that night felt like sealing a promise to myself. I detailed every legal victory: the protective order that barred my family from interfering, the CPS report that called their actions severe medical neglect, and the criminal plea that forced my parents to admit guilt. Each document was a shield, proof that no one could take my autonomy again. I printed 5 copies, tucking them into my backpack, locker, safety file, Dr. Mercer's office, and Olivia's records. They were my insurance, a reminder that my rights were ironclad. Reflecting on the past 3 months, I saw how much had changed since that terrifying night. I'd gone from gasping for air, my fate in Emily's hands, to standing firm in my own power. The protective order kept my parents at a distance, legally bound to stay out of my medical decisions. Veronica's family gave me a home where I was valued, not tolerated. Dr. Mercer and his team provided care that healed my lungs and my confidence. Friends like Rowan and Veronica stood by me, their support a quiet strength I leaned into. The trauma hadn't vanished. Some nights I woke up gasping, not from asthma but from memories of that party, of my parents' inaction, of Emily's cold dismissal. The fear lingered, a ghost I couldn't fully banish. But it no longer defined me. I wasn't the girl who had to beg for her inhaler or wait for permission to seek help. I was free, free to breathe, free to heal, free to dream. Saturday morning broke with a golden glow, the kind of crisp autumn light that spills through windows and makes everything feel possible. Veronica's mom knocked on my door, her voice bright but firm. "We're going shopping today," she said, her eyes twinkling with purpose. "For your medical supplies. Just yours, no sharing, no hiding." My chest tightened, not from asthma but from a rush of gratitude. For years, my inhalers had been stashed in shared drawers, often moved or borrowed by Emily, leaving me scrambling during attacks. The thought of supplies that were mine alone, untouchable, felt like a door swinging open to a new life. We piled into her minivan, the familiar hum of the engine a comforting backdrop as we headed out. Our first stop was a pharmacy downtown, its shelves lined with medical gear that felt both foreign and empowering. I wandered the aisles, my fingers brushing over packages until I spotted it. A purple peak flow meter, vibrant and bold, my favorite color. It wasn't just a tool, it was a statement, a piece of me reclaimed. Veronica's mom grinned as I held it up, nodding like she knew exactly what it meant. We added a full kit, extra inhalers, spacers, nebulizer masks, and a sturdy lockable box to keep it all safe. No one would ever touch these without my permission. Our next stop was a medical supply store where we found a sleek mini fridge for my liquid prescriptions. It was small enough to fit in my room but big enough to hold my future, meds that would keep me breathing, no questions asked. The third store, we picked out a medical alert bracelet, its silver surface engraved with my asthma diagnosis and emergency contacts. Veronica's mom handed me a laminated pocket card with my action plan, simple and clear, relying solely on my judgment. "This is your call," she said, her voice steady. "You know your body best." Those words landed like a gift, heavy with trust one hadn't felt in years. Back at Veronica's house, we transformed a corner of my room into a medical station. I labeled each item with care, my handwriting neat and deliberate, as if writing my freedom into existence. Purple peak flow meter sat proudly on my desk, next to the lockable box that held my inhalers and masks. The mini fridge hummed softly, a quiet guardian for my meds. Veronica's mom stood beside me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "This is all yours," she repeated, her eyes soft with pride. I believed her not just because she said it, but because I felt it, a weight lifting, a chain breaking. For the first time, I trusted I'd always have what I needed to stay alive, no one's approval required. My asthma, once a relentless enemy, was now under control. As a kid, attacks had sent me to the ER, gasping and terrified, often because Emily or my parents delayed care, dismissing my symptoms as drama. I remembered nights curled up in bed, wheezing, praying the attack would pass because Emily was at a dance recital or didn't believe me. Now everything was different. I used my inhaler daily, tracked my peak flow numbers 3 times a day, and saw Dr. Mercer regularly. My last visit, he'd pulled up my test results, pointing to graphs that climbed like mountain slopes. My lung function had soared from 60% to nearly 90%, proof that consistent treatment could undo years of damage. He printed the charts for me, a tangible record of my healing, and wrote prescriptions for 3 months, ensuring I had backups at home, school, and Veronica's car. Living with Veronica's family was like stepping into a home I'd never known I could have. They didn't just give me a place to stay, they made me feel like I belonged. They called me their second daughter, invited me to stay through graduation, and showed me love in the quietest, most powerful ways. At dinner, they set an extra plate for me without fanfare, as if I'd always been part of the table. When I had a minor flare-up, Veronica's mom sat with me, timing my inhaler doses while her dad brewed chamomile tea, joking that it was magic for calming nerves. Her little brother teased me about my awful pancake flipping skills, laughing as I flipped one straight onto the counter. Their love wasn't loud or showy, it was steady, woven into everyday moments that made me feel seen. College applications became my next big step, a way to channel my pain into purpose. Writing about my medical neglect was daunting at first, like peeling back layers of a wound I'd tried to ignore. But as I typed, the words flowed, each sentence a piece of my story, how I fought for my life, how I found my voice, how I survived. Olivia, my school counselor, was my guide. We sat in her office, surrounded by folders and a label maker, building what she called my safety file. It was a lifeline, organized with sections for medical records, legal documents, emergency contacts, and tabs for insurance cards and therapy referrals. She made 3 copies of my protective order and scanned everything onto a flash drive, handing it to me with a smile. "This is your power," she said. "Keep it close." Olivia also introduced me to scholarships for students with medical hardships. We pored over pamphlets for colleges with strong support systems for chronic conditions, some with pre-med programs that lit a spark in me. I'd started thinking about becoming a doctor, maybe a pulmonologist, to help kids like me who'd been dismissed or ignored. The idea felt huge, almost too big for the girl who'd once begged for her inhaler. But every time I checked my peak flow or used my inhaler without fear, I remembered how far I'd come. If I could survive years of neglect, I could chase a dream that once seemed out of reach. One afternoon, as I sat in chemistry class, my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. She admitted she'd made mistakes but stopped short of apologizing or acknowledging the night I nearly died. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the reply button, my heart racing with a mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to respond to make her see the damage she'd caused, but I stopped myself. I took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the air fill my lungs without resistance. Deleting her message was my choice, my way of protecting my peace. I didn't need her to understand. I didn't need her guilt or excuses. I needed to keep moving forward, free from the weight of her words. That freedom, both literal and figurative, changed everything. 3 months ago, I'd been gasping for air at Emily's party, my lips turning blue while my parents stood by and she prioritized her modeling scout. I called it my 4-minute death, a moment that could have ended me but instead marked a turning point. Now, I had a protective order keeping my family at a distance, a stable home with people who cared, and medical care that healed my lungs and my confidence. Trauma still lingered, a shadow that crept into quiet moments or tightened my chest in dreams. Maybe it always would. But it no longer controlled me. The shopping trip with Veronica's mom was more than a practical errand. It was a declaration of my independence. As we organized my medical station, I felt a shift inside me. The purple peak flow meter, the lockable box, the engraved bracelet, they were more than tools. They were symbols of my right to exist, to breathe, to live on my terms. Pocket card with my action plan was a promise that my judgment was enough. No one could take that away. Veronica's mom watched me arrange everything, her eyes soft but fierce with pride. "This is all yours," she said again, and I felt it deep in my bones. I was no longer the girl who had to beg for her life. My asthma, once a constant threat, was now a manageable part of me. I could run without wheezing, sleep without fear, and plan a future without wondering if I'd survive the day. I remembered the years when attacks were a crisis, when I'd wait hours or days for care because Emily was at a dance competition or my parents thought I was exaggerating. Now I had a routine: inhaler in the morning, peak flow checks, regular doctor visits. Dr. Mercer's graphs showed my progress, a visual reminder that my body could heal when given a chance. I kept those printouts in my safety file, a testament to my resilience. Veronica's family gave me more than a roof, they gave me a home. Their love was in the small things: the extra plate at dinner, the way they checked if I had my meds before we left the house, the laughter over my burnt pancakes. They invited me to stay through graduation, calling me their second daughter, and I said yes without hesitation. They'd shown me what family could be, not bound by blood but by care. When I had a minor asthma flare-up, Veronica's mom sat with me, calm and steady, while her dad made tea and told bad jokes to make me smile. I wasn't an obligation to them, I was family. Writing my college essays was like mapping my journey from survival to strength. Each word was a step toward owning my story, not hiding from it. I wrote about the night I nearly died, about the years of neglect, about the moment I realized I could choose myself. Olivia helped me find schools with pre-med programs, places where I could learn to advocate for others. The idea of becoming a doctor grew brighter, a spark turning into a flame. I wanted to help kids whose voices were ignored, to be the doctor I'd needed when I was younger. It was a big dream, but I was starting to believe I could reach it. When you can breathe freely, literally without a hand on your throat, and figuratively without someone controlling your choices, anything feels possible. Dreams I'd buried under years of fear began to surface. I wanted to study medicine, to fight for kids like me, to live a life where I decided my worth. 3 months ago, I was a girl overlooked by the people who should have protected her, gasping for air at a party while her twin dismissed her pain. Now I was building a future I could believe in, surrounded by people who saw me as I was, strong, resilient, and worthy. This journey broke me open, tore through the walls I'd built to survive. But it also rebuilt me, piece by piece, into someone new. I'm not the girl who begged for her inhaler or waited for permission to seek help. I'm stronger, surer, and surrounded by love that lifts me up. Sharing this with you feels like another step forward, a way to honor how far I've come. Thank you for listening to my story, for being part of this moment where I claim my voice and my future.